the new code, is there any change in relation to transfer between registered providers in the school sector from what it used to be? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it has changed. There is now a requirement that schools have to have a specific transfer policy in place. I know some schools may already have had such a policy in place, but it is now a requirement of the code. And specifically at a very high level, it states that student can't transfer from one provider to the other within the first 6 months of their enrolment of that provider. As with everything, there are exceptions, and a lot of those exceptions really are again linked to it being in the best interests of the student and what is in the best interests of the student. It's one of those situations that I don't think happens particularly often in schools, but it does happen, and I would suggest that if and when it does happen, just to make sure that you have a policy in place, refer back to your policy, and just ensure that all those provisions are covered off and you handle it appropriately.
Yeah, agree with everything you've said there. I think that the code saying that a provider doesn't have to agree to a transfer in the first 6 months gives the school some comfort. What does happen from time to time is that a student will come to a school, will have had a sense of what the school's about, and from their point of view it'll be different, or they realise that it's not a holiday that they thought it was going to be overseas. They'll realise that there will be some restrictions and fairly close monitoring of what they're doing and how they're spending their time and their academic progress. And really there's a significant adjustment sometimes that students have to make in order to get used to studying in Australia. It's not easy. The fact that there's a 6-month period when schools don't have to assess the transfer really supports the fact that it can be an unsettling time for students, and they can make poor decisions in that first 6 months because they've met somebody from another school and it sounds better over there than it does here, when in reality it's probably just the same, but whatever. So there's all sorts of things that go on in that first 6 months as students settling in, but there are transfer requests from time to time because of that unsettling period. I would say something else about it, and that is that if you haven't given good information about what your school's actually like, where it's located, what goes on around it, what the facilities are, then you run the risk of having more students requesting a transfer when they get on the ground and they suddenly realise it's not what they thought. Now that might not be a problem with the school might have given them all the information, but it's just a reminder that the more information you provide overseas to those students thinking about coming to your school, what's actually it's like, the less you have those sort of problems arising.
Absolutely, John, and I think the code requires us to do a lot of those things as well, making sure that the information we provide is not false and misleading. We do provide an accurate description of where the course is going to be located. At induction level as well, you need to make sure that they understand transport arrangements. And you're right, and that's another reason why we have all of this, is it's a huge change for those students culturally, and arriving at a school in Australia can be a fairly confronting experience. Yeah.
Do you use a guardian service at your school?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. We've taken the view that having a independent advocate for that student, so just another person that is there acting in the best interests of that student, similar to the homestay, but to facilitate that communication process between the school and the student. So we do.
And those guardians, or it's not a guardian because the school retains guardianship, but an advocate for the student, they usually speak the student's language, so they're able to.
Ideally, yes, absolutely, and that also helps facilitate communication with the parents who are overseas. So obviously communication, language is potentially a barrier, so having someone that has a relationship with the parents, can speak the language, It just helps facilitate communication around academic progress, any welfare concerns we have. But yes, I think it's very important to note that we use the term guardian, but it's not the legal term guardian by any means. And once again, you know, the school cannot delegate any of its responsibility for that student to any other person.
It's interesting that the code's actually been very specific in clarifying that issue. In the new code, obviously there must have been some confusion around that out there. And so, yeah, but I know a lot of schools that do have this independent person, and you can see the benefit of it in opening up the communication.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.